What's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and the gentleman next to me is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting, and welcome to another awesome Friday episode of Indie Game Business. There is no Indie Game Business next week because Jay will be in Gamescom, but there's some afterwards, and we're super excited today to have Irena. She is the Irena. Did I say that wrong? Irena?
That was right. Irena.
Irena, I'm getting better and better at this. She's the CEO of Unleash Games, and we are talking about reviving the magic of MMOs for the modern audience. That's super interesting. Welcome to the show. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. And actually, I wanted to start the conversation right there. What is the modern audience?
Well,
can we define that before we kick off the convo?
50-year-old men and 12-year-old kids.
I just got reattached to the heroin that is World of Warcraft, so I'm somewhat of that. I know, seriously, I was so good. I was off it for like 4 years, and then yes, I know. Yeah, I'm completely sucked back into it now again.
Retail or classic?
Retail. Look, I'm not going to go back and deal with all the crap that we had to deal with in classic now that everything has been modernized. So yeah, I'm 100%. I'm 100% retail. I think classic is pretty much a masochistic endeavor for people, and if they enjoy it, knock themselves out. I do not look forward to going back and having to buy arrows for my hunter before I go out and do no straight up retail. But yes, still getting a sense of how everything's changed in the last 4 years. But I mean, that is a good question. It's like, what is modern? Because I think it's expanded so much now that it's like, where does everything fit in?
Yeah, and who is the primary gaming audience? This is like a big controversy that's driving a lot of dialogue in gaming consumers too. Is defining what is the modern audience? Is it the 18 to 35 straight white men, right? That I've been building games for. We lost Dan. But okay, but he's still here. But the question is what is a modern audience? We have kids that have grown up. We have parents that have grown up playing video games, and now they're the adults. We're the adults of this world. We grew up playing these games, and now we get to make the rules. We're the modern audience, right? And then there's also our kids. Do you have kids?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. And do they have a tablet? Do they play games?
Oh my! Constantly, it's my kid. Yes, trust me, they play
Yeah.
games. That's
mine
not a
too.
problem.
Mine too.
But I mean, we had this conversation. A friend of mine last night, and we were talking because he and I grew up playing games, obviously, and then he's got kids my age as well, and we were talking about what they play, and to me, I've got a 12-year-old, and he's deep into Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite. And those are the main 3 games. He does play other stuff, but those are the main 3 games he plays. And, what I have learned from watching him play is it's less about the game itself or the graphics or even the content. I mean, what type of game it is really. And it's more about that's where his friends are. Because I'll look at it and I'm like, man, why? It's like Roblox drives me crazy because there's so much possibility and so much creativity in it. But at the same time, 90% of the stuff just looks like a prototype we would have played for a game 14 years ago. And I'm like, why are you want to go on a raid? Here's what
their standards are way low. I mean, their peak gaming is Minecraft, my friend. That's 8-bit voxel madness. And they don't care because it's about the game experience itself. Minecraft created a palette for them and super stepped away from visual fidelity, and it captured an entire generation of kids. So is that the modern audience?
Let's rewind for a second, though, because I want to ask a question that we always want to ask because it's fascinating. Tell everybody how you first got into the industry, and then walk us through your career up to this point, and then we'll deep dive back into the modern audience too. But if we don't do that now, I'll forget. So yes.
Well, that's actually really fun. And we can definitely step down memory lane. I actually have like a slide that when I introduce people to my career, it's a timeline of my career. But I started off in games way back while playing video games. I call my video game career the video games that I grew up playing. I played games like Decathlon and Dragonflight on a compact luggable. It was like a giant like briefcase PC. My dad worked in computers at Security Pacific. He built, server systems and designed server farms for banks. And so the nerd was in me. I built my first PC when I was 11. I started playing board games like Diplomacy and Ticket to Ride. I love Ticket to Ride when I was 14. Like I am a gamer through and through. You can see this is like my collection of games that I've played, but also helped make. But I played so much, and I started playing a game called EverQuest while I was working at a company called the Hollywood Stock Exchange. It was a fantasy stock exchange out of Santa Monica, founded by Max Kaiser, who's like now a Web3 bro. Like he's one of the Web3 people. He was an interesting character, but he came up with this concept of the Hollywood Stock Exchange, and we had fantasy stock market of actors and movies. And it was like my first experience of creating a game system that drove people to independently and like create progression trees within their own context. And I what I mean by that is we gave them a goal to, build a portfolio and, a stock value for their portfolio as high as possible. And then the content was created naturally by the players interacting and selling and trading the stocks. And some people might argue that isn't, a real game, but I think actually what it was a way to show that players through their interaction create their own content, which I think is what drives a lot of video games today and what fascinated me with online games. And when I started playing EverQuest, I fell in love. I got to go on adventures. I spent way too much time, 7 years playing EverQuest. And all I wanted to do was make video games. I also played a lot of RTSs and Warcraft. So I didn't know that World of Warcraft was going to be a thing, because then that was just a double down on my obsession, because I was a diehard Blizzard fan. But I loved the gameplay of EverQuest. And I ran guilds in EverQuest. I was in high-end raiding guilds. We got to Planes of Power, where we were doing raids for 3 days straight. And I got a job I was working in websites, so I got a job working on the websites for EverQuest at Variant. I was the last employee of Variant Interactive, as it was acquired by Sony Online Entertainment, and I was responsible for transitioning the Sony station over. Like, this was like somehow a magic job made for me, and it's the Sony station over to the operations of Variant, and also integrating that team. And then everybody was laid off, and I ended up losing my job in the process. But that kicked off my career of like, hey, I had a video game somehow tertiarily attached to my resume. And I got a job as a user interface designer on this game, Horizons, which is a game, it was supposed to be the ultimate MMO. There's a classic thing with MMOs where they promise you like the greatest game, the greatest open world, the greatest sandbox. And this was our friend David Allen. He promised a hyper photorealistic game where you could play anything from a gnome to a dragon.
Oh,
this was the art of the release title. It did actually release, published by Atari. But you could play a dragon, and it actually had a very robust and fantastic crafting system that we designed into it. But yeah, this game did not come out as promised, but it got me a taste of what building MMOs was like, is that it could be a raging dumpster fire. Or later on, I got onto the team working on World of Warcraft. Actually, shortly after the walkout, after release, I had been applying for a job at Blizzard for, 4 years. And I know this is getting a little bit long, but this is the fun part of the story, is that Blizzard, I desperately wanted to work there. It was my dream job. And when I applied, finally, I was, and I'd gotten a response for a user interface designer role. I never thought that I would ever see that at Blizzard, and yet there it was. And when I went in, I was first given a programming test to code in Lua. I had never coded in Lua before in my life, before the job application. And when I went through the test and I answered some of their design questions, by the end of the conversation, by the end of the day, they said to me, Irena, we've been looking for you for 2 years. And I said, I've been applying for 5. Where have you been? But I got onto the team. I immediately was like, I got onto the engineering team. I was like a front end engineer, so not hardcore engineer, but I can script, I can code, I can do art, I can design, and that's what they loved about me, was that I could do the whole stack. And then they also made me a community manager on top of that for the add-on community. So I fell in love with a lot of great people there, and we and a lot of amazing add-ons from the community. And I got this, had a love affair with the idea of crowdsourced innovation, and the fact that Blizzard had such open doors with letting players come in and modify the game. I think that was a key piece of World of Warcraft that a lot of people miss, is that community bit where every player that felt that invested, they could jump in and feel like they were a developer for World of Warcraft too. And that's a special thing, especially for deep fans. So I got to work on a World of Warcraft for almost 3 years. I helped release Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. I was responsible for such great UI features as the glyph system, the barbershop, vehicles, PvP 2.0, and arenas. Like, I put esports into World of Warcraft with the team, but the whole experience was probably the absolute best team that I'd ever had the chance to work on. And then I was called to the East Coast by Kurt Schilling, the baseball player, to work at 38 Studios. And 38 Studios promised, again, to be the ultimate MMO with Kingdoms of Amalur. And I was there for many, many years. And in fact, I got married while I was out here, and I worked with probably the most talented team ever assembled on this MMO. And the company went bankrupt 3 months before we were going to launch into beta. So I'd like to have a moment of silence.
That was an interesting situation. I mean, the whole, I mean, we could probably do a whole show about that situation. I mean, because we've seen, I mean, obviously there's a lot of governments that invest in, in games and in grants, and then, matter of fact, here in the U.S., it's like one of the hardest places to get anybody to do that. But that was the first time anyone had, it wasn't a tax break, or it wasn't like a grant. It's like the state of Rhode Island literally invested in that game.
Well, it was a loan guarantee. Basically, if we defaulted, then the state would be liable, which is what ended up happening. So, like, it's complicated, and it was not in my pay grade to like even hypothesize around some of the legislative issues around what happened with 38 Studios. However, the state of Rhode Island is still paying for it to the tune, it's a $75 million loan guarantee, and they're paying something like around $121 million for it.
Wow.
It's a thing. It's a thing. And like, even I still live in the great state of Rhode Island, and I actually have it like a personal mission to find a way to make things right around the situation. And in fact, I'm, working to see if there's a way that I can revive the game and rebuild some sort of semblance of Amalur. We're working with R.A. Salvatore on this project, but it's still, one of those things that there's low hope for there ever being any sort of sense of justice for all the people that were injured by the situation. But like, MMOs have done some amazing damage. And actually, I would argue that situation kind of was like the nail in the coffin for how MMOs would fail. Like,
it really was.
The hit rate of MMOs were like,
because you didn't see a lot of traction after that for a few years.
in the Western world. I mean, there's been plenty of Eastern MMOs.
Yep.
I mean, there's and really really powerful games there, like Black Desert, certainly one that just took over the world. And there are plenty of other games that are still coming out, but the core of what an MMO was, I think, got lost in translation over the years. And I think that's kind of the thing that we wanted to talk about. But to sum up, like the career journey, that piece, and I emphasize the MMO piece because that's why we're here. And I've been a part of teams that have thought themselves to be building an MMO. I worked on a mobile game called Game of Thrones Conquest, and most recently, I worked on a game called Monopoly Go over at Scopely.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard of it.
Played it a bit. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's another one that became like crack for a little while. But yes, there's a certain amount of joy that you get out of destroying your 12-year-old's buildings. I mean, well,
they would do it to your Legos.
Oh, it did it every day. That was like, I mean, there were sharp words exchanged in the house for a little while over Monopoly Go because yes, it's like, what do you mean you broke my Eiffel Tower? So yeah.
Winning. Can I tell you? So, like, when I apply for jobs, I like to use this phrase about me and like the role that I play on a dev team. And I see it as my job is to shorten the distance between the dev team and the player, right? As a UX designer, it's my job to deliver as much deep understanding about the player and also to get the team to relate to the player so that they're crafting the best possible experience. And that was something that we did with Monopoly Go was I worked to create this set of personas. And these personas were literally a family. It was mom and her two kids, brother and sister. Mom and daughter, they're aligning, they work together, and brother, he comes in and he messes shit up. Like there's a PvP and a PV, like, and there's a co-op and a PvP like persona within the suite. So like every single game system was designed with the thinking and the framework of, okay, how do two people work together through a process? How does one person play? And then how does somebody come in and antagonize and create mayhem?
Yes. That's his job. That's the 12-year-old's job. Is complete and absolute mayhem.
Because there's always that persona. Somebody wants to make mayhem. And if you give them an avenue to, and you build the gameplay around it, you can create like a really compelling and like addicting game.
Yep. So back to the question on what is the modern audience, because it used to be, I mean, so yeah, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that audience was still strictly that 18 to 24, maybe 18 to 30-year-old white dude. Mm-hmm. But because all of these games, a lot of those early ones that you mentioned, they came out in that same thing. Oh, here's EverQuest. Oh, wait, here's another one that's like EverQuest, but better. Here's another one that's like this, but better. Everything expanded. And personally, I think World of Warcraft is a part of it because it opened the door to the casual audience. Even though that wasn't what they were called back then, you didn't have to spend 3 days raiding, on the Plains of Power anymore to enjoy good stuff. So if anything, the modern audience has expanded into a lot of areas that weren't originally intended. So how do you, decide who to target? How do you approach that new audience, given the fact that it's so wide?
Well, that's what makes MMOs great, right? Is that in an MMO, we have different classes, we have different trade skills, we have different progressions that we're chasing. So the way you solve that problem is to create different play patterns that meet the needs of those different players. So you've got players that are more into crafting, so make crafting more viable. You've got players that are super, super into, UGC and building. So make that viable progression. Give everybody something to do that meets their specific needs. And, and in that, like at least in my case, as a player, I want a game where I can just jump in where I can't I don't have a lot of time to grind or raid or do all these high level things, but I still want to come in and have fun. Like in Diablo 3, I have a high level character that I get to just like jump in and take boss battles with. Like that's the kind of experience that I have time for as a busy parent. An MMO can serve all of these needs just by simply building a class structure and a progression structure that supports each other and that creates interdependency. So you don't need to make something super complicated and deep. Well, in terms of like story or even world, you just need to make it so that players have a reason to talk and need each other, regardless of how it is that they like to play.
So it's interesting because I've seen, since I got rehooked on WoW back again, you on one hand you see the people that are like, there's nobody here. I saw somebody on Reddit last night. It's like I logged in the Stormwind. There's nobody here. And there's a lot of people that are perfectly fine for that. That's why they just do the instant queues and things like that. But then, like the younger generation who's there pretty much totally for the social side, where do you get in and start balancing that so one doesn't feel overwhelmed and one doesn't feel underserved?
Well, that's very much the issue. And that's actually one of the things that really harmed the social fabric of WoW was installing some of these convenience features, these, instant queuing or, looking for group or the random dungeon finder. It turned your social interaction to, from going up to a dungeon entrance and seeing other people there and having this abstraction of this virtualization of people from different places, but your characters are at least visible there. And you're like, hey, yo, you look like a warrior. We need a tank. That interaction is valuable. But Random Dungeon Finder now just allows you to find a group and it's like going to automatically matchmake you, slot you in, and then you're just going to zone in and like start taking your dungeon together with strangers. And then the minute that's gone, you're gone. There's no more moment when you leave the dungeon and you're like, oh, so what's next? Want to chat later? Like, I call that the white space of the social experience, the white space of the MMO experience. We're missing that. There's no more like running across Redfall. There's no more, running all the way up to Loch Modan because you're meeting your dwarf friend and encountering more difficult content and learning to have to deal with that. One of my best MMO memories was when I was like level 5, is earliest in EverQuest. I was a barbarian shaman in Hollis, and I had to be escorted by my friend Eric, who played a Solarial, a high elf mage, and she ran me across the entire continent of Norath, and I was scared shitless, and it took like 12 hours. It was so hard. Sorry. Just I'm being triggered a little bit. But I mean, going through like Kithakor Forest, these moments that like are hard, they are part of the point. The journey is the point, not the end point.
I think that's part of the reason that Classic became as big as it was, even though I don't believe Blizzard thought Classic was going to do what Classic did.
They did.
There is still that part of me that when I die in one of these games, I do miss a corpse run. I do miss a good corpse run. Now, I don't miss it after I've tried that corpse run like 5, but yes, there was. It's like, and I remember those early days of, in EverQuest of running, and I cannot remember where I had to go to from where, but it was like you run halfway across the map and then you wait for the boat and then you hope you don't fall off the boat because then you're naked because you didn't want to lose all your stuff. It's now, you don't get to do that anymore. But at the same time, when I look back at it,
okay, so point number 2 in MMOs is modern MMOs, or the games that we call MMOs these days, have a really poor sense of risk versus reward.
They do.
And it's like skewing towards casual does not mean making the game easy. It means making it accessible, low friction. The UI should be pretty readable, but like even casual players want some challenge. They want to be like, they want to feel intelligent. Sid Meier actually was one of the best game design talks I ever saw. and it was actually in my first few weeks at Blizzard. Sid Meier said that, always make the player feel smart. And sometimes making the player feel smart means taking them within an inch of their life and letting them come back from behind, right? And giving them the tools that they need to make smart decisions to get there. And there's a power to that, putting a player on their back foot and then giving them a challenge that they get to overcome. Where is that in a lot of games?
It doesn't exist, and I don't want to blame the casual gamer for it, because
no, it's not their fault.
There's a lot of benefit to it, but yeah, I don't have to worry about if I die on this cross-country run that my bag. It's one of the things I really miss about EverQuest is that you died, your bag fell, and somebody else can just pick it up and wander off with all your stuff. I get why that's not a thing anymore, but there is very little risk reward. And so I got back into WoW like towards the end of the remix thing for Pandaria. The other downside of that was you couldn't learn your class in that, whatever they call it, that event, because you just leveled up. So you could level to 70 in 4 hours. And it's like, you don't learn your class that way. You don't learn a dungeon that way. And so I agree. I do think there should be more risk reward. But again, is that, when you're looking at designing something like Haven, is that something that you put in and say, okay, well, this mode is for those of you who want this, and then this mode is for those of you who just want to, face smash your way on your keyboard to get through the dungeon? I mean, it's how do you factor it in there? How do you keep both sides happy?
By the way that you keep both sides happy is by scaling your content so that if they just bring more people, they can win more easily. Bring more firepower, bring more friends. Don't put a cap necessarily, but if people want to be challenged, they can choose themselves to go and tackle a challenge, with a core, just Holy Trinity tank, DPS, healer group, and see how well they can take down a boss. Like half the time when we're playtesting, my gut is like, our content even now is too easy. I want to get smacked down. Do you remember the days when like you would try to get a boss and it would take you kind of weeks with a group of people?
Yes.
You'd keep trying and trying and trying. Like overcoming is just as valuable as winning. Actually, maybe more. Actually, yes, more.
Now it's a matter of, has somebody updated Deadly Boss mods to tell you when to move out of everything? That's
the downside of the whole add-on thing. Is that you just
and
played
that's
your
what
mods.
I wanted to, that was like actually one of my, because I see Star Wars Galaxies up there, and that was a game, one of the first ones that had a ridiculously deep crafting system. I mean, to the point of going and building your own villages and everything in that. Are you all looking to do user generated content, or is that something, especially with a family type game, that you need to keep clean? Because we know we're live on your stream, so what I'm thinking is going to pop up in the game. I'm just not going to say it because we're on your stream. But yes,
I think there's a World of Warcraft music video. You can find it on YouTube where there's a Tauren female singing that the internet is for porn.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
The TTP timeline is a thing. And you know what? If people are going to build that kind of content, they're going to build that kind of content. It doesn't matter what systems you put in place, what protections you put in place. It's going to show up, and a 12-year-old is going to be giggling, and then the 40-year-old is going to be giggling right behind them.
Well, I was going to say,
while
I'm
also
trying to
steal them.
but that's beside the point.
Yeah,
I'm not a responsible.
We're all going to think it's funny. Okay. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. However, we actually think that the MMO model is improved by adding UGC and adding concepts of villages and communities, and like literally abstracting out the guild into physical space. And that's one of our key innovations for how we want to create player generated cities. Yes. Like our game is a player generated world. but also a way to do things like shared progression and have, certain players who can play more contribute to the playtime and play experience of those that can't play as frequently. It's something that we have thought about really deeply. Like, we see a blending of this is going to be acronym hell, but like MMO and RTS and RPG all into one little bubble as the way forward for modern MMOs.
Are there any massive multiplayer RTSs? No,
No.
I'm not talking about the free-to-play stuff on mobile where you spend tons and tons of money to build a bigger wall around your town. But, I mean, that's an area
I mean, yes, you could call that a 4X game on mobile, like Lords Mobile or even Star Trek Fleet Command. Those games are all, like those are RTS MMOs. Because they're little empire builders.
A PC one. Because it's the RTS market in general was victim to something I've talked about frequently on this podcast, where publishers would then justify not signing and building RTSs because no one was buying RTSs, but the reason no one was buying them is because none of them existed, and so it turned into this whole thing. And the same with like space combat and even adventure games, which have now come back too. And so I think over a period of about 10 years, we lost a lot of the love of RTSs until about 2 years ago when everything started getting re-released again. And so
one of my favorites.
Is there an opportunity to bring that to a wider audience? Because you can't, RTSs are not casual games. You have to be.
Well, here's the thing with RTSs and why RTSs don't work is because of the unit count for each individual player, right? You need hundreds of units in big battles. And if anything, LOL, League of Legends is kind of a hybridization between like a Warcraft 3 style RTS, hero-driven RTS, and classic RTSs. It was a natural, Dota was an evolution of that sort of that gameplay pattern.
RTS.
Yeah, absolutely. RPG RTS, which Spellforce being one of those as well. But like processing power and unit read, like these are things that would be impossible in any sort of like massively multiplayer or like social RTS. Now, if there was a like that's a great play pattern though to just drive matchmaking and individual matches. But I don't think unless you can abstract your main character down to a single unit and then that all of your social engagement happens through that individual unit, then maybe it would make sense. The way that we think about RTS in Haven is the tech tree. When you would build your village and you build your base, you'd start off with a few base units that then unlock another unit that then unlocks opening up like other build trees. We see that as a lot of really like amazing game space for progression and unlocking progression for your village and having the village work together to unlock those things. And so it's almost like a reverse RTS where all of the players themselves become the individual units working towards the progress of the whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. How do you keep that from becoming boilerplate though? It's like if you go and you look at a lot of MMOs today, or even just a lot of RPGs in general, one quick Google and you have the optimal build if you want to be a barbarian or something like that. How do you go about building something like that where it doesn't automatically just get boiled down by the hardcore players into, okay, this is exactly how your tech tree should look in order to be
this is what our village needs to look like for optimal harvesting and
exactly
husbandry, which that's going to happen no matter what. And actually, you want people to do that because the number one thing you want with an MMO or any community-based game is you want people talking about it. So if there are optimal builds and optimizations for how one engages with the game, you want to create that conversation space and have gameplay that drives that kind of behavior. But the way that you get around that is you give every individual player their own individual agency. So if you're a mage, your house is going to be a mage tower, and you're going to customize that mage tower however it is that you want. But instead of clicking buttons into a frost tech tree, you're going to be incanting frost spells into your mage tower, getting frost gems to decorate your doorway. You know, it's going to be an expression of you as a mage. And what, you know, temples or other deeper build tree buildings that you'd have access to are different based on the spread of different classes in your village. So it's really like it's its own form of discovery. You know, if you have a very warrior heavy village and, you know, only one healer, that village is going to look very different from a village full of healers that need more warriors. And they're going to be always looking for a tank. And you probably should get a tank in your village. Just saying.
You get a bonus if you bring a tank. All right, Derek's got a question for us. I think this sentiment resonates with more gamers today, seeking experiences like the MMOs we used to play. You know, hardcore and punishing, basically. Do you think there will once again be a space for these types of MMO experiences? I mean, especially with the success of classic WoW.
Well, I mean, what do you think is the more popular version of a lot of these games that have been around for a long time? You look at WoW, classic WoW blew the lid off of like the old school gameplay patterns. RuneScape too. RuneScape old school, I think, is more popular than retail RuneScape. Same thing with Project 1999. People play Project 1999 more than they play EverQuest. Note to EverQuest, you should have an EverQuest Classic server. Maybe Daybreak can sort that out, because I would play that. I would play the crap out of that.
No, I do not want to fall off the Wood Elf City again and die just because I wasn't paying attention walking across a walkway. There's
You got to watch out for that auto run, my friend.
Oh,
you think
you're bringing back past trauma right now. It's like,
but I mean, again, these are the stories that carry us through life, right? And you know, like Mistmore, the vampire mansion, and going to and taking down Estrella underwater in, oh my goodness, so many great memories of playing EverQuest. And I was just having this conversation with R.A. Salvatore about how, like, we think that EverQuest is probably one of the greatest MMO like world building jobs. Like the story and the geography of EverQuest, what was so special about it, and this kind of gets to my point about the MMO experiences. EverQuest was built very differently from a lot of MMO worlds later on, in that it was built to be a living, breathing world that was there regardless of whether or not the players were.
Okay, how?
And we, well, you know, there were scripted events, things would be happening, and there was the world would breathe. Kithakor Forest was a very happy-go-lucky, like low-level friendly zone in the morning. But at night, the skeletons came out, and it was scary AF, and you had to, you know, just avoid it when it was dark. These little things that make the world feel alive actually matter. And that's what we were doing with Amalur, was we made a giant world. It was absolutely beautiful, and like with a deep history. There's also a little bit of problems with going about it that way. But the thing that made EverQuest special is that it felt more like a playground than it did like a Disneyland ride.
Yeah, I agree. Especially at the time. I see what you're saying now, because it wasn't about going to an area and then initiating something. That something was happening whether you were there or not. So yeah, I get that part, actually.
It's like, you know, hey, tonight, do you want to go to Solusek A, or do you want to go to Lower Guk? Like, do you want to go kill the Ghoul Lord, take down some, you know, go through the lava? Do you have your fire resistance gear? Like, it was like picking a bar, except we weren't drinking alcohol. We were just going out and having fun and falling to ghoul frogs.
After a couple of runs through Lower Guk, we were definitely drinking alcohol. That was not a problem. So when you're going about and because I mean, one of the things that I want to talk about is we still see a lot of developers that are like, I'm going to make an MMO, and a lot of those are first-time developers, and we're sitting back here going, whoa, don't jump into that end of the pool. yet.
That's what they said to Kurt Schilling.
Well, that pool
Well,
had problems, but the when you're looking at this in terms of a marketing point, where do you focus that player acquisition, for lack of a better word, when you're trying to pull in, all these different age groups? Because it's like, I know from, my own kid, it's like I have the games that I play with my friends and I try to get him to play them and he's like, I don't really. And then we don't want to play. It's like, I have no desire to go jump into, a Roblox game with him. I mean, I'll play Minecraft all day long, but, Roblox is a whole different thing.
Yep.
Where do you start targeting, your audience search when you're looking at something that's this big and this accessible?
Well, it's funny because we built the same sort of persona suite for Haven that we did for Monopoly Go. And so our primary target audience is you, the dad that grew up playing video games, that like you want a game that you want to play, but you want to play it with your kids. And you'd play Diablo 4 with your kids, but that's a little dark. And you probably also have a partner that wants to like have some gaming moments with you, but maybe doesn't necessarily have all the time in the world to do the grind. But if like you and your kid could, or your kid could do some of the grinding, would enable them to be able to join in and go on a dungeon run once a week. And so like your family game night is hitting a dungeon together. But you all have things that you can do throughout the week that help contribute and make your dungeon run more effective. And how you get to that content is part of the journey. But like we designed the game specifically to be like, hey, okay, this is the family unit. How do we make a game that they can play? And by hitting all of these different, the time barriers, some people are time poor, some people are time rich. We can actually create a game that can serve the needs of a lot of players. And then that's where the magic starts to happen. So we're not going to maybe necessarily market directly towards the dads. What we will do is we will find, did you know that like one of the top 10 games on Roblox is a game called World Zero? And it's a straight up dupe of WoW and kids freaking love it.
I think that's what he plays, and it drives me absolutely crazy. I'm like, play the real thing. That's the way better.
But the real thing isn't the real thing that you remember. They've changed it. It's a completely different game. And it's like,
All right. But so this actually ties into the next question. With so many MMO games on PC and now on console as well, what do you feel it's going to take to make a new MMO such as Haven really stand out and gain a massive audience akin to WoW in its early days?
There's a cheap trick that we have, and I'll show you. Loading, please wait. But we're building it cross-platform.
Oh, nice.
So we made a cross-platform, cross-play game. Log into your same characters that you would regardless of where you play them. You have the same characters available from every platform. Let's see.
All right. So are y'all going, are you shooting premium or are you going free to play? What model are you using?
So it's actually, our model is informed by how we think, like it affects the psychology of how you interact with the product. And I actually think subscriptions work really, really well for MMOs because you don't want to put a limit on the time. You don't want to have any sort of energy systems or things where you have to monetize in order to buy time. All of those things that are typical within free to play, I think are toxic to actually keeping players engaged. So you want to have as much headroom for players if they want to play 1 hour a week or 100 hours a week, up to them. Maybe you shouldn't play 100 hours a week because of your health and, you should go out and touch grass. However,
have a job,
like legit. I mean, I rated a lot. So, I should have probably touched grass when I was 25, a lot more than I did. I lost my 20s to EverQuest, but I think we're thinking about a subscription model, but having it be free to play. So everybody can come in and play and experience it. But if you want to take up residence, if you want to get the new expansions, the new characters, the new modules, the new zones, the biomes, the continuous content, the character races, the new classes, if you want to get them first, it's a battle pass style system where you would subscribe.
I mean, and that's another thing that has changed so much, because there are so many different options for how you enter the game. I mean, you've got the subscription, or I don't think WoW doesn't have a battle pass. I don't think so, but it's got virtually everything else with the in-game stores and then everything along those lines. I agree on it's like one of the issues that I have with Genshin. It's like I don't want to have to log in and roll for new characters every couple of months or whenever I do it. So I think there's a lot. You definitely have a lot more options in how you monetize and how you engage in that than you did 15, 20 years ago. But so here again follows right into the next question. Attention spans have definitely changed with this new TikTok generation. Do you feel it's more difficult than ever to keep players invested? I mean, not if I'm paying $15 a month, then I'm pretty invested. But I mean, you are catering to a different audience now than it was, when we started playing these things.
Well, absolutely. But the thing is about audiences and trends is that they are like a pendulum. Right? So when a trend goes this way, oftentimes there's a counterculture that builds towards the opposite side that then swings the trend in that direction. So short attention spans, I guarantee you in the next 10 years, we're going to see a reemergence of long form content and maybe like paced out television shows, things where like you don't necessarily have instant access to everything. And because there's going to be a reappreciation happening of the investment of time, kind of like we're talking about with our MMO, is that we want to make more white space in the experience, less about the exclamation point in your field of vision that you're like, oh, I have to go talk to that NPC, and more about you seeing another player in really cool gear and being like, oh shit, where did they get that breastplate? I want one of those. Like that shift of attention from game world into other players has to come with the game designs to support it. And that's what players are looking for. That's one of the reasons why Minecraft is so popular. Minecraft, you can fall into a hole. I've fallen into like a focus hole and built something in 4 hours and wondering, when was the last time I went to the bathroom? Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said that publicly. And this is with me and my kids, because we're like building a really cool fortress. Kids have plenty of attention span. They just need to feel like that they have a space to be able to deep dive and use it as a toolbox or as that playground that is open for them to be creative. You give them the tools and they will be creative. And how do you, like what we're thinking about is how to take that modern perspective and add some of that progression-based gameplay so that it drives players towards doing things like, in order to get people to go out and collect resources, you need to create crafting recipes that require those resources, but then you have to put gameplay challenges that protect those or keep those players from getting at those resources, so that players have to take down NPCs and whatnot in order to be able to get the thing that they want, to be able to get that other thing. There's a lot of like meta motivators in creating really powerful gameplay loops, but it doesn't require you like putting a quest objective on their screen and say, do this thing and then do this thing and then do this thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, how do you keep that from getting overwhelming? Because I mean, that's one of the things that I've seen in several of these games, especially like when I stop playing a game for a little bit and then I go back, and then it's like your quest log is like 16 layers deep, and there's all these people like, here's your daily for the day. And it's like, you get into an analysis paralysis situation where you're like, I don't even know where to start right now. So if you've got all the systems, how do you not flood your players?
Or just don't have those systems. I actually I am anti that kind of stuff. On the 38 Studios team, I was all about diegetic UI and like how much can we put in world and have that context come within the metaphor of the player being immersed in that world, rather than relying on a new hotkey and a window popping up and then managing that window. I think that actually dilutes the game experience, and then you play more of the UI than you play of the game. So, we have to work to create reasons for players to engage in the world. And once their attention is on the world rather than on their UI elements, maybe they'll actually play the game, and then they'll see that there's another player that needs their help, or they can pay attention to things that are happening in novelly around them, and jump in and participate, or come up with their own things to do. And that's the thing, is that you have to trust the players to sort their own priorities, and you have to give them reasons to have competing priorities, so that then they have something to make a decision over. It goes back to the Sid Meier advice: give the players a reason to feel smart and to make decisions that affect the quality of their experience. So pulling back on all of these cheap tricks of like, here's your daily, it's now converted into here's your daily offer, pay 99 cents for more dice.
So I mean,
it drives monetization, but
I have to, argue with Sid there. His games don't make me feel smarter, because anytime I actually don't feel smart, I just restart the world. So it's like, okay, I'm not winning, and you did better than me, and I obviously didn't figure that out, so I'm just going to restart, and then I'm going to do it again. So a good question here on AI says that you have a fusion of experience plus AI on your site. I'd love to hear how you're using that tech in service of the MMO experience.
Yeah, actually, that's someplace where we're thinking about AI very differently from where like the trendy conversation is going about AI. Everybody likes to talk about Gen AI, and yes, Gen AI has like really, really cool capabilities that they offer, and give a creative toolkit to people who don't have creative skills, and that's where a lot of controversy lives. But where AI is actually really handy? AI is also really handy in monitoring live interactions and gameplay and snapshots of like interactions between players to make sure that nobody's being toxic to one another. Like AI can actually go back in time and data logs and forward in time with projections, and then create an assessment of whether or not somebody's being toxic with a lot more accuracy than a human who just jumps in and gets a report and has to make like a judgment call. So that's one place where AI can serve the MMO experience to create more positive environments for players, and to protect players from, potential bad actors that are present in these social games. Because that's a real concern. Like
yes, it is the internet.
We have to own it. It is the internet, right?
Yeah.
We were just discussing the B side of the internet earlier. But so, that's one way that AI helps us. Also, AI allows us to be cross-platform and multi-resolution friendly. We can build something at one resolution and leverage AI to up-res and down-res in a way that we never had access to before in terms of quality. And so we like, where before we would have to make one texture set for every single resolution, like literally we can have a essentially an AI robot managing the output of art specific to each platform. So it's more optimized. The frame rates are better. Like these are things where it's not sexy to talk about AI with, optimizing your game engine, but that's the place where it actually matters for players. Going from, 15 frames a second to 30 frames a second is a game changer, especially on mobile when processing power is lower. So we think about AI from the perspective of engineers, like, how do we use AI to be a force multiplier for our developers, and then but still have the developer drive the creativity? So we're not going to have AI coming up with concept art and driving, these cool armor sets. We're going to have an artist create an armor set, and then AI is going to make that armor set into like a base form for humans, for gnomes, for giants, for an armor set for dragons. Who knows, whatever our player races are. That would take months for an artist to do, and it's not fun work. It's busy work, and having to work on like the triangles overlapping and all the bugs that come up when you're hand modeling armor sets for multiple player races, and then genders, like times to everything. No, we can have AI do things like that for us so that the designers can be making more cool armor sets. So I hope that answers the question.
So we're almost out of time, but you had a point in your thing that you filled out for us before, so we were getting ready, that I am just very curious about, and I want to know. You wrote tab targeting versus auto targeting versus aiming. Why? What was that in reference to? Is this like how you all are building Haven? Because I am very much an aiming person.
I think tab targeting is one of the reasons why WoW is so successful. Fight me.
No, actually, I agree with that. I'm thinking more like shit.
You're not fighting very hard.
When you think it like, yeah, you're right. It is. I'm thinking more.
It allows
along the lines
people
of a
who are
shooter,
not as skill-based gamers to play in a strategic, like a tactical skill-based context without it being turn-based.
I mean, I main a druid, so all I do is swipe anyway. It's pretty easy. I don't even have to tab target. I just do it. But no, I mean that is one of those things that it makes everything a little more accessible to everybody else, because you don't have to worry about, being able to just precisely target everything in first person.
I am not a Twitch player. I like RTSs. I played a lot of Baldur's Gate. I like to hit the space bar to pause my round so that I can think. I'm more of a strategic gamer. And tab targeting, I believe, creates a perfect hybrid between that strategy mindset and some action style gameplay. And it's a great hybrid, in my opinion.
This has been fantastic. Aside from the past trauma that you've brought back up with mentioning all those areas in EverQuest that
corpse runs,
never want to revisit ever again.
But you will.
Wait, will.
No, there's no corpse runs in my game, though. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. There is a certain amount of.
Do you remember having to get all your coins together out of your bank to go get a coffin from the vendor, which cost like a plat? Or 10 plat, and then everybody had to get the damn thing to then be able to summon one person's corpse.
Yeah, don't miss it. Don't miss that part. I miss what I miss is what you were talking about was the risk reward thing. I can go and just respawn here and have most of my stuff, but I'm going to lose some things, or I can run, no gear, naked all the way to Lot Modan and try to. Get my corpse before the timer runs out. I do miss that part. All right. Anything that you want to plug? Obviously, Haven. How can people get involved? What can they find? Where can they go? All that kind of good stuff.
Well, please come and check out our game. And we stream our game live every single week in a live weekly playtest. And we're playtesting today. It's Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Twitch, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you call it. We're everywhere, but you can find us. The best place to go to bump our numbers is twitch.tv/unleashing games. Unleashed was taken. That happens. But twitch.tv, unleashing games at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Come check out Haven. And today we're actually having a phenomenal guest because we have guests on our playtest. I hope that you and Dan are able to join. That'll be an amazing, amazing gameplay session. But we have Leah Hoyer, founder of Level Headed Games. She's the creator of Disney animated series Kim Possible and Phineas and Ferb. Like legit, she is legend.
Oh, nice.
And she's building a adventure little multiplayer co-op game similar to our game, but with her unique style. I hopefully will have some things to be able to show. So please come and check it out, and check us out every Friday.
Awesome. Dan?
Awesome. Yes, this was amazing. Thank you so much, Irena. Make sure if you're not in our Discord, discord.gg/IndieGameBusiness, all of the things, IndieGameBusiness.com. If you are a game developer, you want a list of publishers and investors, you can sign up for our newsletter at IndieGame.business or IndieGameBusiness.com, right? We've got it all.
There. It's all there.
All of it. If you just type in Indie Game Business as one word, that's going to take you to everything that we need. But yeah, join our Discord. We've got all kinds of awesome stuff. We have pitch deck reviews. We're not going to be here because Jay's going to be in Gamescom, so there is no next Friday.
Enjoy
like I said
Germany.
earlier. Yeah, have fun in Germany.
My favorite show of the year, even though it's the
I
craziest.
know.
It's
I
still my
wish I were
favorite.
joining you.
Yes.
Pain.
Not
All
me.
right.
All right.
I'm just going to stay here in Florida and enjoy the weather here. So.
Oh.
In August?
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Nobody enjoys the weather in Florida.
Nobody wants that.
I have awesome air conditioning, right? My weather is inside, air conditioning. It's amazing. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it big time.
Oh,
Excellent.
thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Irena. All right, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.